respond to them, but I can say a few things and try to answer some of the questions, although, I mean, some of the questions and problems, you know, they haunt my sleep, so I've been thinking about these things too. But I should say, this is one little thing, I couldn't think of the thing I wanted to say about Gary Snyder, but it actually was more, had to do with the Taiwanese Aboriginal people. Even though there's a small percentage of people, they're highly Christian, right? There's something I heard 90 to 95%. And even in my own limited experience, it was a very indigenized Christianity. You know, so you see Mary and Jesus with Aboriginal headgear, and then also snake spirit, you know, inside the church or something. So I thought that actually fit with the looser kind of model of conversion that didn't abolish the native beliefs, that somehow coexisted in some very complex ways. So now, getting back to Guy's presentation, you know, an American poetics seemed wrong to me all the way. You know, I mean, I wouldn't say if I call it a poetics, a global poetics, it's overreaching, underreaching. I was completely unhappy with that. I can only say that I feel my first responsibility as a cultural critic, as a citizen, is to be able to critique and dismantle and transform the country that, you know, I'm part of, and that when I go to mainland China and I hear people there critiquing America, but almost never critiquing China, and I'm thinking, well, see, that's why I like Taiwan, because you know, you feel the responsibility as a citizen, as a critic, etc., to transform that space you're in. So I think actually the way I'm trying to render America as against the Samuel Huntington model of something closed in on itself and closing the borders and locking it onto this Anglo-Puritan terrain is exactly right. I mean, that to me was the George Bush terrain that I was opposing. And so all of these ideas of Asia-Pacific or Asian American, between Asian America, on the road, displaced, picture bride, becoming Hawaiian, you know, turning American, you know, becoming Japanese. I mean, the whole idea of America was almost like in quotation marks in terms of a, I think this is Professor Lee's point, if I had called the book Be Always Converting, Be Always Perverting, that kind of would have had strict, well, that would have had the connotations, that the editors would have never gone for that, but in a sense, unless it was Duke University Press would like that. But anyway, that in a way that's right. I mean, I wanted to so transform the idea and the model of conversion and transculturated terms and in these trans-Pacific terms that it would shatter the fixity of that Anglo-Puritan model that somehow remained tied to core values of New England and what Samuel Huntington, right? So that was the way I was trying to estrange and refigure American poetics. And I think Guy is exactly right in the sense that it has a lot to do with not just a language transformation and the translingual transculturation of conversion in different contexts where different values are smuggled in, or hybridities are created in linguistic gaps and that kind of thing. That the relocating, resituating, the whole framework. I didn't pick that title. Why they picked the Southwest Road, you know, it was so oceanic they didn't quite know what to do with it. But it really had to do much more with the West Coast and with Oceania. So the other thing, I mean, I think sometimes when I'm doing theory, I'm doing poetry. When I'm doing poetry, I'm doing theory. That, you know, that there is a kind of poetic vision, or where the idea of the language transformation, the way you're figuring it, you know, you're recomposing it, that you're making a kind of a poetic move on the whole notion of American poetics. And so the book is being put in libraries and theology libraries. It's probably the only time I'll ever get into the Duke Theology School, the Harvard School of Theology. It's kind of bizarre to me. I don't know. You know, Lindsay Waters called it literary criticism. Harvard calls it American Studies literary criticism. But somehow they're tracking it as this book about, you know, in Christian theology. And I think if they really read it closely, it's actually perverting the whole idea of Christian conversion, including in Dylan, where the irony and the metamorphosis works against any stable sense of, you know, what conversion means in Dylan as a poet. Now, let's see what else. Yeah, I mean, Guy's point about that Emersonian moment. You know, well, I was surprised that you actually quoted from several parts that it's kind of it's 300 pages, and you quoted from similar passages that I quoted from today to try to get the sense of the book across, the autobiographical ones and other, and I think they are important. I realize that the Emersonian sense of empowerment and semiotic mutability and, you know, is not quite the same as that, you know, what you're calling that moment of erasure and the damage histories that are contained in Malcolm X, you know, that James Little, Malcolm X. I think actually Barack Obama's use of poetics of conversion is closer to Emerson, you know, in some ways, but and I also think Barack's reinvocation of theology and God talk and all of that, again, is trying to say, you know, I was a social activist, I represent this, you know, invisible republic of all these multicultural forces, and religion is really important to me. And still they try to say, does he have a birth certificate? Is he really a Muslim? You know, he's so complex and interesting that, you know, they're trying to push him outside the border, send him back to Africa, I don't know, back to Indonesia. So this is sort of dealing with Guy's question about the we, you know, the we. It was kind of an attempt to take the we, you know, we Americans away from the Bush, Samuel Huntington lineage and put it closer to Bob Dylan, Sam Cooke, Paley Hauofa, and then, you know, these other more post-colonial kind of writers. But I realize that it's it is a limitation to be mainly a kind of frontal attack on the American project or American poetics. But I take that as my first responsibility as a critic and a cultural critic. But I actually mean by it something much wild, like you say, a wild ride. Now, with Professor Lee, I actually, I like the kind of work the book was doing on and in you, because I do have the same ethical, spiritual reservations about trying to convert someone else, or, you know, seeing myself as a pure convert, that I'm actually not advocating that Americans or Koreans go around converting people. You know, Koreans are the one people in Asia that seem to have really bought into the Protestant conversion model the most. You know, and they have the most